and historic military, civilian, commercial, and search and rescue aircraft that we have here in our collection. And we're going to start right here. In 2013. Now also on the left side of the tram, I want to highlight the EA-6B Prowler. This is the gray aircraft over here on the left that has the long tube coming out of its nose. This is an the two-seat trainer version of Great Britain's very first jet fighter, the Gloucester Meteor, is open for the student. Prospective pilots are first instructed in the basics of the science of flight, like how to take off, land, and control the plane in the air. This training is often conducted in small propeller-driven aircraft. Once the basics are mastered, pilots move up to more sophisticated, faster, and often it's not until the pilots start to train in the actual plane they'll be flying when they learn combat techniques and how to employ their weapon systems. While many trainers are specifically designed for that role, others are modified or adapted. Alright, the next group of aircraft I'm going to highlight for you, we're going to go on the right side of the tram. This is going to be our collection of VIP transports. These aircraft have been used to transport high-ranking military officers and government officials. They're generally commercial airliners that have been fitted with modified executive seating. The first VIP transport I want to highlight for you is over here. The green VH-34 Choctaw helicopter, Marine One today. Choctaws remained in use as cargo and transport helicopters until their retirement from military service in 1974. The next two VIP transports I want to highlight for you are going to be on the right side of the tram. And both of these have used the call sign Air Force One, meaning they have both been used to carry United States presidents. The first Air Force One I want to highlight for you is over here on the right side of the tram. This is the militarized version of the Boeing 707 airliner, which the Air Force called a VC-137. This plane was introduced to the presidential aircraft fleet back in 1959, and while both presidents preferred to fly on the larger, faster, jet-powered VC-130 to the Philippine Mars, that's one of our museum's most recent additions. I'm going to talk about it later in the tour, but this gets you an up-close and personal look at this gigantic aircraft. Also on the left side, not a part of our museum, admission to you is free, and I'd highly recommend going in there, checking out that beautiful plane and all that really interesting history that goes with it. Next collection aircraft I want to highlight for you are going to be on the left side of the tram. These are our Harriers, and of the vertical takeoff and landing jet fighter. Originally developed by Hawker Aviation in the United Kingdom, the Harrier was adopted by both the British military and the U.S. Marine Corps in the 1970s. Four rotating nozzles under the wings direct the exhaust downward for vertical flight. The silver aircraft in the middle of the row, that's the one that has the 0 on its nose, is one of the experimental Kestrel prototypes. All the other aircraft in this row, all of which were built in England, served in either the British Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, or with the U.S. Marine Corps. World War II brought the quest for ever faster speeds to the forefront of fighter plane development in the 1950s and the 1960s. The military at that time de-emphasized the maneuverability of the dogfight era and instead emphasized speed and long-range missiles for air-to-air combat. A couple of great examples of this design philosophy are the two light gray colored planes over on the right side of the tram. The F-102 Delta Dagger has the red markings on the tail, and the F-106 Delta Dart has the yellow tail. United States. The plane's triangular or delta-shaped wings are very efficient at high speed. Alright, now if you look over to the right side of the tram at that silver aircraft that had all major powers on both sides of World War II worked to develop jet-powered combat aircraft during the war. Germany was the first to fly a jet in 1939. By 1944, Germany, Great Britain, and the U.S. to jet dogfighting. Okay, now over on the right side of the tram, I have 3 examples of lightweight air combat fighter. They were first delivered to the U.S. Air Force back in 1978, and they're still being flown by our Air Force and by militaries around the world. The F-16 that has the Arizona flag on its tail is one of the first A models. This plane was built in 1981, and it served with several fighter squadrons before flying with the Arizona National Guard and retiring in 2000. Giant dark blue flying boat on the right side of the tram that I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is called the Philippine Mars. This is truly a rare aircraft for our collection in that there was only 7 of these Martin Mars flying boats ever built, and the Philippine Mars is only one of 2 that are still left in the world. They primarily served as cargo aircraft with the U.S. Navy from 1945 until 1956. Upon its retirement from the Navy, the Philippine Mars went on to fly for a timber company up in Canada as a firefighting aircraft. The Philippine Mars can hold necessarily removable water for either maintenance or for storage. All right, the next military cargo aircraft I want to highlight for you is on the right side of the tram. That's the one that has the yellow on the side of the fuselage on the right side there. That's called the Douglas C-54 Skymaster. C-54s are probably best known to 5. Some of these C-141s were actually modified with stronger airframes so they could actually carry the Minuteman missile as their cargo. How's kind of building? That's where our museum's restoration team does their magic of turning these relics we acquire into the displays that you get to see. Back and visit all these places I'm going to describe for you anytime you'd like.
Oh, this is the drone.
The next aircraft I want to highlight for you is over on the left side of the tram. This is a B-52 Stratofortress. But this isn't just any B-52. This is one of only 3 A models that were ever built. This is the oldest B-52 still left in the world, and it's one of only 2 that were modified to carry and launch the X-15 rocket plane. To fly as a mothership for the X-15, this B-52 was modified back in 1957. This modification included mounting a pylon under the right wing to carry the X-15, as you can see, as well as cutting away part of the bomber's wing to make room for the X-15's tail. The X-15 flew between 1959 and 1968. It set a world-end hypersonic flight. The information gathered by this program allowed scientists to develop the Mercury. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the X-15 program, we have a great display inside of hangar number 7. Hangar number 7 is that building that was right adjacent to where you got on the tram. That building also has a pretty interesting collection of old drones. So if you haven't already, check out hangar 7. Now over on the right side of the tram, you'll see these as a possible replacement for the Lockheed C-130 Hercules cargo plane. The Boeing YC-14 and a McDonnell Douglas YC-15 competed to win a contract with the U.S. Air Force. However, neither one of them was selected, and the airline. The position of the jet engines and specially designed flaps is one of only 2 prototypes that were ever built, and it was loaned to our museum back in 1981. The first group is a subset of that. These are going to be Boeing manufactured jet airliners. The first Boeing jet airliner I want to highlight for you is coming up on the right side of the tram. This is the one that says China Southern on the side. This is a Boeing 737. The next Boeing jet airliner I want to highlight for you is coming up on the right. This is the giant plane that says Cathay Pacific on the side. This is a Boeing 777. This is the world's largest twin-engine long-range airliner and has a capacity to carry 396 passengers. The 777 was the first aircraft to be completely designed using computer-aided design tools. The 777 we're looking at here is actually the very first one ever produced. Now the giant white airliner over on the right that says GE on the side of it, that is a Boeing 747. This is the first twin aisle airliner, and it could carry up to 500 passengers. The 747 we're looking at here was actually first delivered to Pan Am World Airways back in 1970. In 1992, it was purchased by General Electric to be used as an engine test bed, because as many of you know, General Electric also builds jet engines. All right, over here on the left side of the train, we have a McDonald's. This particular one was modified to become the Orbis Flying Eye Hospital. It flew around the world and provided eye care to communities in need, as well as taught local medical professionals these eye treatment and surgical techniques. This flying hospital was equipped with the latest technology and training facilities, including a full surgical suite that's located on board. All right, a little museum orientation as we go along. If you look to the right side of the tram, you can see a green building over there. And then there's a yellow building coming up. There's actually a third yellow building over there. Those are our hangars 3, 4, and 5. All three of those hangars have great displays of World War II and Korean War aircraft. Okay, over on the left side of the tram, we have our SOFIA. SOFIA stands for the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. This is actually a Boeing 747 SP, which is the shortest version of a 747, and it originally flew with Pan Am. SOFIA was a joint project between NASA and DLR, which is the German equivalent of NASA, to study the universe in infrared light. Many objects in space emit light at infrared wavelengths. For this reason, infrared technology allows us to see what would usually be invisible with other instrumentation. SOFIA first flew in 2007 and completed its first full suite of measurements in 2014. In 2022, it flew over here to the Air Force Base across the street. It was brought over here as part of our museum's display. Now, once in a while, our museum will open up both SOFIA and Orbis, so you can go tour the inside of these planes and see the scientific instrumentation that's still inside. That's a pretty cool tour, but you have to check the website for that tour availability because it doesn't happen all that often. Now, before I leave here, I think we're good enough. If you crick your neck to the left and look up on the side of the fuselage, you can see something that looks like a giant garage door up there on the side. When SOFIA was in service, that giant door would be opened up in flight. Okay, over here on the right side of the tram, you'll see a silver little aircraft that says Flying Doctor Service on the side. This is called a drover. This plane was built. This plane first flew in 1946, and only 20 of them were ever built. Once in service, though, the drover proved to be underpowered, and Qantas decided to sell the planes to private pilots. And now, as I pass the B-52 on the right side of the tram, a little program note for you. I have two other versions of B-52s I'm going to show you later in the tour, so stay tuned for those. Also, as I mentioned, the pilot training industry. U.S. government education grants to returning vets were allowed for pilot training. Cessna hoped to grab much of this constellation, or Connie. The Connie is the silver plane over here on the right side of the tram that has the TWA, or Trans World Airlines, painted in red. It was one of the first long-range civilian airliners to go into service after the war and could carry between 44 and 81 passengers with a crew of 6. The plane we're looking at here, this is actually the 10th Connie that was ever built, and it's the oldest one still left in the world. In service, if you look to the right side of the tram at the giant white airliner with the ANA on it, you'll see one of the most recent airliners to go into service. This is a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This is the first jet airliner that's not constructed of aluminum. Instead, it's nearly 80% carbon fiber composites. This, along with new advances in engines and wing shape, make it one of the most fuel-efficient and cost-effective jet airliners ever built. The one we're looking at here is only the second Dreamliner ever produced. It participated along with other prototypes in the aircraft testing and certification processes that lasted from 2009 till 2011. All right, over here on the right side of the tram, at the end of this row and down the back side of this row on the right, is most of our museum's collection of foreign aircraft that were built outside the U.S. The plane I want to highlight for you is the pink plane over here on the right side of the tram. That's called a Sepacat Jaguar. This was originally intended as a two-seat supersonic jet trainer and light attack aircraft. In the end, though, the Jaguar was designed as a single-seat interceptor with nuclear capability. They entered service with the French Air Force and the British Royal Air Force in the 1970s. This particular one, the pink one, actually flew with the British Royal Air Force during the First Gulf War. The unique color of this plane is known as desert pink, and the color provided effective camouflage in the desert sands of the Middle East. And the gray jet that's next to the pink one is another version of the Jaguar. Okay, the dark green jet on the right side of the tram, that's called a Saab 35 Draken. This is a Swedish fighter interceptor developed and built by Saab between 1955 and 1974. As jet fighter technology evolved during the Cold War, Sweden recognized the need for a supersonic fighter capable of intercepting enemy bombers at higher altitudes and engaging fighter aircraft. Alright, next up is going to be some of our collection of long-range bombers. Long-range strategic bombing was developed during World War I as a way to attack military and industrial targets far away from the front lines of battle. The small and ineffective raids of World War I gave way to the huge air battles of World War II. The development of the tram. This is called a B-36 Peacemaker. It's the largest bomber to ever serve in the U.S. Air Force and used 6 of the most powerful piston engines ever developed. The B-36 was the last propeller-driven strategic bomber used by the United States. It went into service in 1949, but it was already becoming obsolete, and its replacement flew only 3 years later in 1952. All the B-36s were out of service. Alright, the next bomber I want to highlight for you is on the left side of the tram. This is our second version of a B-52 Stratofortress. This is actually a later version of the aircraft that was introduced in 1959 and served until 1994. This particular aircraft actually served in the 1991 Gulf War with Iraq and participated in what was at the time the longest combat mission ever flown in history. On the first night of the Gulf War in January 1991, this aircraft and several others flew from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana non-stop to Iraq and back, launch hours before landing. This is actually our third version of a B-52 Stratofortress. This version began flying in 1956 and was the main version of the aircraft used in the Vietnam War. They were painted this way with black on the bottom and green camouflage on top, since many of their missions over North Vietnam were flown at night. The last B-52 left the assembly line in 1962. Today, 58 of them remain in active service, and they're expected to be used until 2050, giving them a potential active service life of nearly 100 years. It also gives them a new nickname. Instead of a Stratofortress, now they're a Stratosaurus. The last bomber I want to highlight for you is on the left side of the tram. This is the sleek silver Delta winged aircraft. This plane is known as a B-58 Hustler. The B-58's claim to fame is that it was the United States' first supersonic bomber. Only 116 of these were ever made, and the one you're looking at is the very last one to come off the production line back in 1962. Over on the right side of the tram, the earliest and first in this row is a two-seat MiG-15 trainer dating from the 1950s. This is the one on the right side, maybe slightly behind us, with the 038 on the nose and the Polish markings. The last one in this row is a MiG-21 fighter. Now, while all the aircraft in this row were designed in the Soviet Union, many of the examples we have in our collection were actually built in either China or Poland. Okay, over on the left side of the tram, we have most of our museum's collection of helicopters. Initially developed in the 1930s, helicopters are designed to take off and land vertically, thus eliminating the need for large open areas. They have found extensive service in the military for carrying troops, cargo, and as armed gunships. Civilian operators have also found helicopters handy for many different jobs, including law enforcement, search and rescue, air ambulances, firefighting, tourism, and cargo shipping. One of the largest heavy lift helicopters developed for the United States Army is on the right side of the tram. This helicopter is a heavy lift helicopter capable of carrying large objects such as artillery pieces, small vehicles, and large amounts of other cargo. This helicopter is capable of carrying 27,000 pounds. All right, now we're on the left side of the tram. I want to talk about that gray and green camouflaged helicopter on the left. That's called a MiL-24 attack helicopter and was first built back in the 1960s. This is a unique Soviet-designed helicopter that does not have a Western counterpart. It was an attempt to combine the firepower of a heavily armed and armored helicopter gunship with troop-carrying capability. While the troop-carrying capability proved to be of little use in combat, the MiL-24 has become one of the most successful attack helicopters ever built and is still being used by Russia and 30 other countries. The orange and white helicopter on the left side of the tram, that's called a Bell HH-1N Iroquois. This is generally called a twin Huey because they were updated to have two engines and a larger, longer cabin than the original Huey. This particular helicopter started out life as a VIP transport for the U.S. Marine Corps. In May of 1987, it actually carried President Ronald Reagan during the G7 summit in Venice, Italy. In 1990, it was converted and it was assigned to the Marine Corps Air Station in Yuma, Arizona. Here it worked as a search and rescue helicopter until it was retired in 2020. Okay, folks, that concludes the tour. I want to thank you for riding with us today. I also want to remind you we operate